Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar on how to lead campus efforts for learning mobility. I will give everybody just a moment to settle in before we get started. And I just want to briefly go over some housekeeping. This is a webinar format, which means that your microphones and your cameras are turned off. You are more than welcome to use the chat button to ask questions, chat with each other, chat with the hosts and the panelists. If you have any specific questions for the panelists, please use the Q&A button. And if you need closed captions, you can do so by selecting captions on the bottom of the Zoom panel. And this webinar is recorded, so the recording will be available later today, hopefully, as soon as it's up. And without any further ado, I will hand it off to Noah. Thanks, Noah.
Yeah, thank you so much, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us. We're all just so excited to be taking part in this webinar with AACRAO today, and we're really excited to have so many people join us live, as well as we will be recording this, and so for everybody who's watching this asynchronously, welcome as well. And before we get started with our panelists, we did want to give a chance to get to know just who's here with us. And so we invite everybody to use the chat to share just your name, role, and why you're here, as well as, if you want to do a separate post of just any questions you hope to get answered today, and we'll try and make sure we get those to our panelists. And while folks are doing that, and also you can feel free to use the Q&As for the questions you have to get answered as well. And while you're dropping those into the chat with us, let's go ahead and get to know our panelists. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, we'll start with Insia, Christy, and then Jarrell.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Really appreciate you all being here. My name is Insia Bream, and I am the Registrar and AVP at University of Maryland Global Campus. Christy?
Hi, everybody. I was going to say good afternoon. It's just hit the noon hour here in Boulder, Colorado. My name is Christy Wold-McCormick. I'm the Assistant Vice Provost and University Registrar at the University of Colorado Boulder, and I'm really pleased to be here with all of you today.
Good morning / afternoon. It's still 11 o'clock here in Corvallis, Oregon. My name is Jarrell Townsend. I'm the Assistant Registrar for Degree Completion, and I'm glad everybody's here.
Thanks so much. And I'm Noah Geisel, Micro-Credentials Program Manager in the Office of the Registrar at University of Colorado Boulder. And I don't know if nobody has yet decided to use the chat, or maybe we don't have chat enabled for event participants. Oh, we do. Thanks, Steve, for letting us know that works. Big fan of Michigan State and the My Spartan Journey work. But we're going to go ahead and jump in with our panelists here. The first thing is just to level set, to tell us a little bit about just micro-credentialing and digital badges initiatives and how they're organized on each of your respective campuses. And we'll start with you, Insia.
Okay, so I think the first thing I will say is that there is no organization around micro-credentials at my institution, period. I think, we were part of the original effort around this in 2016, where AACRA and NASPA and the Lumina Foundation came together and had about 12 institutions kind of create CLRs that were meaningful to their institutions. From there, we have tried out different platforms around the comprehensive learner record. So University of Maryland Global Campus really serves an adult student population. And, micro-credentials really fit into what our students want to do because they're coming back to study for a very specific reasons. And over 80% of our population are actually already employed. And so for us, the idea of using micro-credentials is really to connect what they're learning at UMGC directly to what they want to do within their careers. And so right now, what we've really been doing for the past several years is just kind of piloting and, figuring out the best way to move forward and sort of inching along, but doing good work that is, teaching us, what really is right or wrong for our institution and our students.
Thanks so much. Jarrell, can we go to you next?
Yeah, here at Oregon State, our micro-credentials is kind of a collaboration between our eCampus, which is like our online learning program, the Registrar's office, and the Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, where Vice Provost kind of provides guidance, leadership, resources. Us in the OTR, we kind of actually like initiate the program or administer the program. In the eCampus, they do more of the promotional efforts and trying to drive interest and really spreading awareness of micro credentials overall, in addition to like what we have to offer at our school. So I believe we're at 37 micro credentials right now, and pretty much, yeah. And so our office and the registrar specifically, we're in charge of like awarding and admitting current students. We kind of have two tracks for students to participate in the program, where they can be like a non-degree, trying to maybe pivot in their career, or just gain additional skills. And we also have the programs available for current students too. And so we kind of manage awarding both populations. We admit the current students and really work with our eCampus programs to help them provide them data so they can try to gain generate more interest in the program, gain additional buy-in across campus. A good amount of academic units are excited about micro-credentials, but we're still getting buy-in across the campus. And yeah, that's pretty much how it's kind of structured here at Oregon State.
Great. And at the University of Colorado Boulder, we are a very traditional campus historically, with a large undergraduate population and graduate and professional schools. And so our initiative began about 4 years ago. And rather than it being a kind of top-down initiative, that this is what we want to be doing as a university, it was very organic. We were really trying to kind of harness all that interest, that energy, those innovative mindsets into where we want to go with micro-credentials and digital badging. And so we, back in about 2019, initially gathered a group of stakeholders around campus representing academic units, non-academic units, technology, continuing ed, graduate school, lots of others, just to kind of identify if we wanted to be in this space, where we wanted to be in this space. And then that's really how we got started. So it wasn't anything that was, kind of bestowed upon us to do, but we really organized ourselves organically. The Office of the Registrar provides the administrative structure, oversights, systems, tools, protocols, the web presence for policies and all of that information. But it really is working with so many different campus stakeholders. We have micro-credentials, both for credit as well as non-credit based micro-credentials. We offer them to matriculated learners for value-added opportunities to enhance what they're pursuing in their academic studies. We also have quite a few micro-credentials available for faculty and staff, and we're really now focused on expanding that reach to corporate partnerships, community partnerships, because we know the sky is really the limit with the flexibility and variety that we can bring, and also know like what can we carve out as a unique niche for a school like ours. It's very traditional, that might meet some different needs than, say, community colleges for workforce development and so forth. So that is how we've organized, and I'm excited to learn from my fellow panelists here.
Thank you all so much for that opening for us. And I think I'm actually going to skip one question, panelists, because I think you kind of already touched on some of the stuff. So I'm going to go from our notes, just so I don't take anybody by surprise there, to the next thing. And for all of our attendees, know that NCEA just published yesterday on the Evolution publication a blog post around the tapping into a registrar's many identities to foster institutional collaboration. And NCEA, one of the identities that you name is that of a connector. And that's both internally on our campus as well as externally. And I want to start with you by asking just how might this connector identity be a way for registrar professionals to lead implementations efforts around learning mobility?
Yeah, thanks, Noah. So, the one great thing about being a registrar is that we do have this wide network. And, even though we are all working at different types of institutions, 2-year, 4-year, whatever it might be, we're able to kind of work together and learn from each other to figure out, what is the best way to, utilize a micro-credentialing strategy. And I think also understand that we don't have to all do this the same way. But the one thing I think a registrar can really help foster is, this idea that what it ultimately comes down to is about interoperability. And, for a student to be able to take their credit from one place to another with ease, and with the ability to then let them pursue whatever goals that they're hoping to achieve. And I think, as we're talking about this, I think we're in the perfect position to, help other institutional stakeholders understand the value in just being able to do that. And then, talk about having standards and using the same sort of technology, to sort of ingest data really between our institutions, so that for a student, it really becomes more seamless and less burdensome for them to just not only move around from our institutions, but also share their knowledge and skills and learning with organizations and their companies and so forth. So I really see the registrar as, a key stakeholder in that conversation. And, someone who's able to kind of drive that, that sort of understanding between registrars and institutions, that it really comes down to the data and how we transfer that between our schools.
I love how you just gave so many concrete examples there, as well as keeping it so student-centered. Jarrell, Christy, do either of you have any other things you wanted to add about ways that we can, occupy that connector role as registrars?
Well, I think making sure that, both on there's lots of ways, both within our institutions, but then external. I think within our institution, we want to make sure we're providing those adequate supports, resources, expectations, terminologies. We want to make sure we're preventing a kind of a Wild West from happening, but also that we can organize ourselves in a meaningful way so that that consistency can really help convey what a micro-credential from one of our institutions really means. And so that it carries with it that reputation and that integrity that is really important to our institution. So I think that's one of the important institutional roles. I think external to our institutions, we as professionals in our field can work together to, while we do have a lot of latitude in how we want to implement these processes, I think it behooves us to work together as a profession to come up with comparable definitions, terminologies that make sense to the external communities, to industry, to other institutions in a global landscape. Because otherwise, if we each we can implement them differently, but if we define them differently or use them in ways that aren't consistent, I think sometimes it'll just add to the confusion and complexity of making this really achieving those goals of interoperability and widespread adoption.
Yeah, and one of our attendees, Dan Kellogg from University of Wisconsin Extended Campus, had a question specific to, just when do we do certain things, in the as far as the business process goes. I think that totally jives with what you were describing, Christy, is just the registrar professionals are thinking about these things, and that's just one of the expertise they bring as connectors on campus is, being able to apply business processes, and I hope that, we really take advantage of opportunities to see, those as opportunities to flex as leaders on campus in this work. You described there about just making meaning, Christy, and so I kind of want to go now to just buy-in. And how can registrars help others in the university community understand value and relevancy in micro-credentials? And how do you get buy-in from academic departments and other campus innovators? And Jarrell, if you're okay with me putting you on the spot, I'd like to start with you on that. Just how are you getting buy-in from academic departments and other campus innovators?
Yeah, to get buy-in for us, we only offer 4 credit, and the way our micro credentials are set up is it has to fall within existing courses So one of our buy-in points is that, you don't have to invent a new course or invent a new program to create a micro-credential. You can look at your current existing programs and build a credential out of those, which leads to one of our goals is to stackable credits. One of the things we offer is like intermediate, introductory, advanced Spanish. Eventually, we'll get enough badges for that to lead to an actual degree. And so when we talk to like academic departments, is like, hey, you have students that are pursuing a degree, you can help them advance their career or, deepen their interest in a specific subject within your existing program. So it's like, it's not, as much effort as it takes to create a new academic program. In the way we have our process set up for like micro-credential submissions is fairly streamlined. So, a department head or an instructor within a department can submit a proposal in fall and have the credential implemented by spring. So that's another way. It's just a quick turnaround of how we can go from an idea to actually implementing it. So those are one of the ways we get buy-in across the campus, in addition to kind of what you spoke on earlier about just confidence in our processes, knowing that, we're going to be consistent, we're going to follow the rules, we're going to enforce the rules. So, if a student is awarded a micro-credential, then they can have the confidence that they actually did the work. So that's what I got for us and trying to obtain buy-in.
So I will say that, I think I mentioned this, but we're a large institution. We have over 90,000 students, but also we're located globally. So we have divisions in Asia and Europe as well. And so, when this conversation started coming up about digital credentialing and how we take this approach, we knew it's one thing to sort of talk about it and have conversations and, ask people who have a day job to sort of invest in an idea like this, and a whole other thing to be able to really put a prototype in front of people to say, hey, no, actually, this is what it could look like, and this is how we move forward. And so, to create buy-in, the approach that we took is just to keep it really small and start with one program. So we started with our MBA program. And, we visualized a comprehensive learner record for others that we then took across the institution to say, here's what this looks like. Here's what this means to our institution. Here's what this means to students. Here's what this means to people outside of our organization. And I think once we started, we had a visual and we were able to kind of show that buy-in just kind of came naturally. So we started with one program, and then there were several other program directors who kind of came forward and said, this could really work well with our program. So cybersecurity and other programs that have a lot of, certifications and, credentials that really help their students achieve their goals started coming forward and say, we can see this working. And that's really how we sort of approached the buy-in conversation across the institution.
I echo everything my co-panelists have said. And also, on our campus, this was never it's not a mandatory. Departments don't have to, propose and offer micro-credentials. We hope that they will be incentivized to do so. But one of the things that we did, again, starting small, but providing a space for those faculty and others who want to innovate, who have ideas that would lend themselves well to being micro-credentials. But also, I say this often, that what's the low-hanging fruit? We provide so much learning and so many learning opportunities on our campus that are not traditionally transcripted. What are we already doing that with a little bit of massaging could easily be turned into a micro-credential, so we can provide something that's verifiable, portable, and that to students and other learners, rather than them just relying on putting it on a resume and it being trusted. So I feel like if you can talk to departments, or if I know on our campus, Noah does a good job, reading our campus newsletters. And if something smells or reads like it could be a potential, great micro-credential opportunity, reach out to that department and say, hey, you might be generating some kind of a document or certificate or something for these students already for this substantial learning opportunity that you're offering, and what can we do to make this a micro-credential program? So I think there's providing that space for those who have ideas and want to innovate, but also looking to see what can we already convert. Otherwise, we sought buy-in by doing lots of just awareness campaigns, holding symposiums, open forums, participating in communities of practice. And that is a nice way for people to kind of dip their toes in, to learn a little bit more, to network, and to start testing kind of the waters on some of this. And then, yeah, I think as more departments and others see what their colleagues and peers are doing, it might energize and give them ideas to make some proposals on their own.
Yeah, and I do want to just kind of, to Christy's point about helping to shine a light on them, and I might put this a little more crassly than others might, but I in my mind stole it entirely from INSEE at last year's AACRAO conference, is really just thinking about the faculty and staff's own egos, and using a microcredential to say, hey, we can tell the story about the awesomeness that makes your learning opportunity so amazing and gives your learners such a competitive advantage, and really framing it in that way. And I don't know if that was your message or if I just wanted that to be your message, Insia, but I took it from you, and that's been absolutely very motivating for me. Insia, one of the other things that you wrote about it in your identities is that of a problem solver. And you specifically say it's the job of the registrar's job to help others solve problems within existing processes and policies. And I think that that's also going to align with a question that David Rogers has asked, saying, at our campus, we have almost too much buy-in because there's a sense that micro-credentials don't need the same oversight as typical majors, minors, et cetera. And so within that, kind of identity of the problem solver, can any of you share specific examples of how you've done this as a campus leader out of the Office of the Registrar with your implementation efforts? And Christy, maybe I know you had a specific one, so maybe I'll start with you, Christy, as far as just not being a vehicle to circumvent governance.
Yeah, well, I think, it's going on what we talked about earlier with the kind of providing that integrity and meaning. That's what registrars do, is we ensure that the credentials that are coming out of our university mean something, that they're consistent, that they have that integrity. And so, we really want to make sure that we can leverage the resources, the tools, the technology, the skills that we have to, support these types of credentials as well. And so I would say, yeah, they should have some governance and oversight. And that could be leveraging your existing governing bodies to approve these. If you're offering non-credit or micro-credential opportunities out of non-academic units, still creating some kind of review approval workflows to make sure that they are properly vetted, and issued. So I think really using some of those resources, like I said, to make sure that we, build policy, procedure, whether it's our governance or the security and integrity around our processes is really key there.
Yeah, and I'll build on this a little. Christy, you said this earlier, but I think you really said the registrar provides the infrastructure for micro credentials, and I think if anything, I almost think that micro credentials need the same level or more oversight, right? I mean, one, if it's something that's coming from your institution, you're saying that this credential means X. And I think, for registrars to define that and really stick behind it, I think is really important. I know that there's lots of conversation about, students having autonomy over some of these micro credentials and, how we sort of validate that. But right now, especially like our institution, we've taken that approach of like, we're awarding this, we're providing this, and this is what it means about our program and that students learning and their skills, abilities, and knowledge that they're taking away. And so it's kind of what you said earlier, Christy, which is, we have to be cognizant about how we're defining these things, about, how we're providing meaning to it, and then, you know, that verifiable piece where when it comes from your institution, it does need some oversight, because you're saying the student has these credentials and these qualifications.
Yeah, just real quickly to that point, then I'm going to turn it over to Jarrell if he's got some other thoughts, is that to your point about they might actually require a little bit more work. We are at that stage in our evolution too, where we are talking about assessment and, you know, not just reporting of micro-credentials, but assessing them. They're micro is in the name of them for a reason. They might have a shorter shelf life. They're not going to be necessarily following the same 7-year program review as like your degree programs. And so what is that cadence? How do you make sure they're still viable, that the people that are offering them are still at the university and doing what they intended to do? So that kind of assessment and monitoring of them might need to be done at a more frequent cadence.
Yeah, and I'll say at our school that I mean the governance and the ability to kind of ensure the value in the micro-credential is kind of the reason why we set up our process the way we have it, and why we only allowed for existing courses to be offered. Because still, like, if a professor wants to offer a new course, they have to follow the current policies and procedures that we have in place. And same with if they want to create a whole new program, like we left those alone, and we kind of created a micro-credential committee to review each proposal, and it's comprised of deans and advisors from across the colleges, across the campus, who have knowledge of their specific program. So they can say if a College of Business is offering a micro-credential, they can look at it and say, oh, these courses make sense, these courses don't make sense. And that way, so when we offer a micro-credential, at least we can pretty much not guarantee, but with confidence say that the skills that we say students should gain out of that are what they're actually gaining, because those outcomes are already built into the courses. So we're not necessarily reinventing a wheel. And the committee pretty much reviews just to make sure we don't have duplicate micro-credentials or similar micro-credentials being offered. So at least if a student earns a micro-credential, they can be confident it's unique enough to be specific to that skill and not get mixed up with, you know, students that have other micro-credentials. But we are also at that point where we're talking about assessment. We're pretty much going into the 3rd year of a 4-year pilot. And we're getting to the point where we've noticed some programs have a lot of enrollment, some programs don't. And also having those conversations around how long should a badge be eligible or, you know, be available to students before we expire. And then they would have to, you know, do additional coursework or something like that to refresh that knowledge. And so, yeah, so we pretty much just kind of built our system within our current processes to govern and to control like courses and make sure that instructors and departments aren't just like offering anything that they feel. And then we're going to be moving forward with trying to decide, you know, how long can a program be in existence before we make a decision if it's a viable offering or not.
And Joe, one quick follow-up question. When you talk about this committee where you're bringing in stakeholders from all over campus and giving them not just a seat at the table, but real actual power to influence how this stuff is shaped, do you feel like that's actually also to the previous question of getting buy-in around campus? You know, have you seen effects of having those broad stakeholders on that micro-credentials committee?
I wouldn't say a big effect with buy-in. So like College of Engineering, they're one of the colleges, they really wanted to offer micro-credentials so their students can have opportunities before they actually finish a degree. Engineering is really intense, where engineering is #1 here. So they're always trying to, you know, find new opportunities for their students. But pretty much everybody that's on the committee is like the champion for their department. But they've had struggles within their department, specifically like College of Business here is one of them that the dean is on our committee, and he's had issues with getting successful proposals from instructors just because for various reasons, part ego things. But really I was thinking about it, probably the #1 thing that has increased our buy-in is the success of the current programs. Like, so Intro to Spanish was the first micro-credential we offered. That first term, the enrollment was really high, and the language program saw that. And then they put in 4 proposals for the next term, and they have more proposals, and they have more in the pipeline now. And so they're really jumping on that and trying to increase their offerings, because for their programs, they've seen that a lot of non-degree students are the main ones looking at those, and some have actually transitioned to the program. So, which is like one of our kind of higher arcing goals of micro-credentials. But yeah, I would say, like, I mean, the committee pretty much, they are the champions for their departments, but they haven't been able to achieve like measurable success with increased buy-in within their departments, to be honest.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing so candidly with us, because that's what everybody's here to learn from each other on. The next question is going beyond these identities we talked about. Something else that really came out in the member survey this summer was, the registrar professionals, leveraging our expertise, right? There's a lot of expertise that we bring to these conversations. There's standards expertise, technical expertise, compliance expertise, change management expertise, right? The list goes on. And so I'm wondering if each of you could share a specific example with our attendees about how you, or maybe even a colleague who you've observed, have been able to lead with expertise out of the Office of the Registrar. And Christy, maybe we'll start with you, because I know you've recently written about this.
Yeah, I often say that a modern day registrar's office, we really do kind of sit at that confluence of technology, data, compliance, student success. You could throw communication, you could throw a lot of other things in there as well, but we need to really be on top of all of those things, because all of our systems, all of the policies, all of the resources and training and communication we provide to the campus stakeholders, they touch all of those areas. And so I touched on this earlier, but really tapping into, some of that expertise, leveraging the resources that we have, because a lot of the same things, to somebody's point earlier, that we do for traditional programs of study need to be considered and done for micro-credentials too. They might be smaller, but they're, just as important in terms of they carry the institutional brand name. We want to make sure that they have that consistency and that integrity. So, I think we bring a lot of that expertise from how do we, what kind of policies, considerations, standards need to go into writing a set of policies and procedures for your micro-credentials. What kind of systems can we stand up or expand to support proposal processes, review processes, approvals? We make determinations about, do these live in our catalogs? Do they go on our transcripts? And so whether or not we are leading these discussions, we definitely need to be part of the discussions, and we are heavy influencers of the outcomes of those decisions.
So what's interesting is I think as a registrar, you have that close connection to the academic schools. And like Christy was mentioning, you have that, touch point to the policies and the creation of new programs and credentials that you're offering to students. But you also kind of help bridge the gap with the other side of things. So like, student affairs, all of the advising teams. And I think that within micro-credentials, that's just as important, because those are the teams that help our students directly understand what it means, right? Or what they can pursue in terms of a micro-credential, right? And then also help them understand how, a digital credential that's awarded, how they can use that. And so, I feel like it's not just, I feel like, we can bridge that gap across to the academic side, but also to the administrative side in that way. But I think when you're thinking about creating micro-credentials, think about it really holistically from, all from advising all the way through to career services and how it fits into each one of those places. And I think that we're situated kind of in a position where we can see the value of it in those various places. And so it kind of positions us well to have those conversations to say, okay, well, this is how you can help foster just not only buy-in, but from your perspective, this is what a micro-credential can mean, and this is how you can incorporate it into your day-to-day business as well. So that then everybody across the institution is speaking the same language when it comes to that credential.
Might just add also, you know, along those lines that with the, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. It'll come back to me. One moment.
Drill, while we're waiting for Christy to think of it, do you want to, anything that comes to mind with for you with expertise?
I mean, with expertise, just like making sure that you're involved in every step of the way in every process and being able to say like what we can do and what we can't do. I feel like in some of the conversations around programs, just in general, but specifically with micro credentials, like it's just everybody kind of starts just throwing all their ideas out there and then just kind of just trying to go for it. And unfortunately, you know, we're kind of always put in the position to be the bad guy or the cop or however you want to say it, and be like, wait a minute, like that's not possible. You know, that's realistic and that's doable, but maybe, you know, but really being able to, you know, saying what is possible and what's not possible every step of the way. So you don't get near the end of implementing a program and then find out that, you know, you don't have a process set up to award students, or, you know, you're unsure of how you're going to record the information in your student information system, or you're not sure who controls the data or what data reports you need. Or, you know, you're not even, thinking about, you know, all of the students that could possibly, you know, be enrolled in the program or be impacted, and making sure that, you know, micro credentials are accessible to everybody you want them to be accessible to. So I think that that's just a way to lead with expertise. We kind of, in the registrar's office, are kind of, I don't know, I feel like we're experts in like the way the school works, and not just in our areas, but how our area interacts with others and how it impacts the students, and just making sure that your voice is heard and that you're speaking up every chance you get when it comes to really anything involved in how to implement a micro credential, I would say.
I love that part about that. Oh, go ahead, Christy.
No, I was to say my fleeting thought returned. I should have written it down when I had it. But I realize as registrars, we might be organizationally positioned in different divisions, units on our respective campuses, which is perfectly fine. But if you're in enrollment management, but even if you're not, you know, I think as we look at the national global landscape around micro and alternative credentials, you know, these are the fastest growing type of credential out there. And if we want to expand our reach, tap into new learner populations, promote equity and access, you know, if alternative credentials are not part of your strategic enrollment management plan, I think you should start having those conversations about what do they mean, both for some of those things, like I said, tapping into new learner populations, but also, you know, for admissions folks who are out talking to prospective students, that for matriculated traditional students, here are some value-added learning opportunities you can pick up it to enhance your traditional degree pursuits. And so I know that we have a lot of enrollment management professionals within, you know, among us in AACRAO, and I would just wanted to call that out as well, that I think it is going to be increasingly an important part of our strategic management, enrollment management planning.
Thanks so much for that. Glad it came back to you, Christy. And I love, Drew, how you said speak up, right? And I love how you encourage that. And you know, yes, a lot of times our colleagues might view us as a bad cop, but you know, I really like to think of it more as bumper bowling. You know, that we're there to help make sure that there's no gutter balls. And our colleague Jacob several minutes ago, you know, put in the chat that you know it's really important to know. The interoperability is key, but at the moment seems difficult to achieve, right? And that's our technical expertise as registrar professionals can help avoid, you know, a 70,000 recurring annual contract that's, you know, we can't get out of for 5 years, that all of a sudden is not very helpful because, you know, it's not interoperable with the systems that needs to be. And, you know, if we're speaking up and we're at the table, you know, leading in those conversations, we can help, you know, prevent those, you know, easily preventable gutter balls that, that I think, hopefully, maybe we're bad cops for it, but I like to think that we're not. Um, and also speak up. We do have a few minutes left, and so please do speak up, attendees. We could probably sneak in a question if you still have things that we haven't gotten to. But one thing that I wanted to ask our panelist leaders here, specific to leadership, we're at that time of year. Maybe we're wrapping up performance reviews, setting up goal setting for the coming year. And so when we think about leadership in terms of just fostering leadership opportunities for registrar professionals within the office of the registrar, are there some opportunities within this emerging space of learning mobility and digital credentials, where we can be thinking, yes, we have the registrar, but we also have an office full of registrar professionals, and how we might be able to do, foster some leadership opportunities there.
Generally, not specific to micro-credentials, but generally, really encouraging our staff to get engaged in professional development opportunities, presenting at conferences, presenting on campus, running for offices, serving on committees, but also giving them, as a leader, giving those budding leaders opportunities to step up and serve and to make sure their voices are heard, giving them some areas of responsibility. And for example, in our office, we've actually had some of our own staff create micro-credentials for student learning, student employee mobility within the office of the registrar. And so it teaches them really critical workforce skills that they're learning as employees in our office that they can then take out, when they're applying for their post-college jobs as well. And so I think really creating spaces for them to innovate and experiment in that area.
I would say that, I see micro-credentialing being just as important to our staff as it is for our students, right? And so, internally figuring out ways that you can sort of document and micro-credential staff who are taking the time to build up their skill set, and to really understand what their goals are, so that when they are ready for that next opportunity or when it comes along, that they know that they've taken those correct steps to move into a leadership position. And I think for so long, I think registrars are really becoming leaders. So the office is really a team of leaders, but it's not always seen that way, because we may not be, at the front of every conversation. We may be handling things on the back end. But, really what that means is that you are figuring out new technology solutions. You are leading projects and critical initiatives and so forth. And so I think really just helping the team see how that they are part of, an overall leadership team, and then helping them build and document those skills that get them to their next goals.
Jarrell is someone who himself is also not the registrar of a registrar professional. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can give my perspective as not being the boss. And so it's really, again, kind of similar to what Insia and Chrissy were saying, provide opportunities in really like delegate some responsibilities. So when I started my position, me managing micro-credentials wasn't a part of it, but it was right in the formation of the pilot program. And, my boss asked me if I'd want to be involved and want to kind of take the reins from our side of things and be involved in it. And that's kind of how I got to this point. In addition to just different webinars, going to the badging summit to get more education. And so that was a great opportunity for me, and kind of really made me see micro-credentialing as a thing, is real, is here to stay, and kind of generated excitement within myself for the program in being a part of, kind of the grassroots per se, and implementing it and seeing where things go. So I say really just providing the opportunity. And if you see, some people in the office that you think would be a good leader, or somebody that can manage a project well, or, maybe they want that experience, but they don't have it yet, then, giving them the opportunity to be a part of, implementing a program like this is a good way to give them that experience or opportunity.
Wow, that was just so powerful. And it kind of occurred to me that an hour after this webinar, Christy and I are going to got called in last week to go present to a couple of our regents for the university system. And I think that personally, as somebody at a program manager job title level, that's probably not an experience that I would otherwise be having if I didn't work in this space of emerging learning mobility. So personally, I can definitely speak to that as well. And Jenna, hopefully you caught a couple of examples there of successful micro credentials, but do any of the panelists want to share maybe one quick example of something that we think that we've seen has been successful? Jarrell, you already mentioned Spanish. Is there anything else, or NCS something that you anticipate being successful?
Yeah, I got one more. It's kind of I consider it our flagship micro credential, but it's programming fundamentals. It's really a computer science program, or we have a computer science double degree. And the badge is 3 of the first 4 classes that the students have to take within that program. And so one, making the badge kind of built in like the early steps of the program, the degree program. So the student gets in, they start the program, they can be successful, and they can kind of get the badge to kind of stamp them early on and can give them the confidence to finish their computer science degrees. Ours is a little accelerated. It's not the easiest program. And also class announcements. Our eCampus program, they started a campaign about a year ago to have instructors of micro-credential programs make a class announcement so their students are aware that the class they're taking can be used, for something other than their degree. And that has really driven the enrollment and made that program successful.
Yeah, Jarrell, that's an excellent example. For us, our comprehensive learner record was, in my mind, really successful, not because of, the record itself, but more because we recognized that the language that we were using to describe the actual program, the classes, the projects, students could take that away and they could use that language in an interview or on a resume. And that was kind of a unintended benefit of the record itself, because it one, helps students kind of remember what they were learning throughout their program, but 2, when you're sitting down, you're trying to think about the right words to use on your resume for something, it kind of took that away and it was right there in front of them. And so they were, it gave them a way to describe their learning that they didn't have before necessarily, or that they couldn't get from a traditional transcript. And so that, in my opinion, is what made it really valuable.
What I'll contribute to this is that, I think success can be measured in a few different ways. I mean, you could look at success in terms of what are the most popular in terms of the numbers and badge issuances. You could look at success in terms of if you are building a model to generate revenue, what is bringing in the most revenue. You could also gauge success by the impact it's making. And I'm going to point to a couple that are non-credit based on our campus. We have one that was born out of our facilities management area that was designed for custodial staff, dining workers staff, many who are not native English speakers and don't have the regular access to technologies and some of the other resources that those of us with office jobs have. And it was really designed to intentionally give them access and teach them how to learn basic computer skills, whether it's using email, whether it's using, Word and Excel spreadsheets and things like that, so that they can use it as a stepping stone into other jobs, whether it's on campus or off campus, but it's creating opportunities for people who may not otherwise have those opportunities through the course of their regular jobs. And that's one I think that is really meaningful and successful in a different way. We also have programs offered through our Center for Teaching and Learning that are designed to improve instruction in the classroom in just and equitable teaching, in teaching international students so that they can be more informed, compassionate supportive instructors down the road. So I think to that first question about, how do you measure success? I think it can be measured in a few different ways.
Thank you so much for that. And we do have time to sneak in one more question if somebody wants to drop one in the chat. And speaking of the chat, I did just mention that for those of you who early in the webinar mentioned you were hoping to get some learning around some of the more technical stuff around wallets and LERs, we aren't going to be able to scratch that itch today. However, there is a online community of practice hosted by the AACRAO Exchange. There's a link there in the chat for it, and it's an entirely dedicated community of practice for digital credentials. And so for people who are interested in that, if you want to carry that conversation, please do join us over there. There was a big demo fest just yesterday where they shared some of the latest and greatest in the wallet and LER and CLR space, showing how they can actually be interoperable. It's tough, as our audience member mentioned in the chat earlier. And also our next webinar is going to be on November 9th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And it's all about demystifying the confusion, and just techie CLR, LER wallet landscape. And it's going to feature some of the leading experts on the vendor space. We have Simone Ravioli from Italy. We have Amrit, the publisher of Evolution, where INSEA just published. We have Carrie Lemoy from the Digital Credentials Consortium out of MIT, as well as I believe Marty Reed from Randa Solutions. So definitely join us there. And if we don't have any other questions from attendees, let me just check the chat. I guess our final question then is, when it comes to credentials that are not credit bearing, but are nonetheless official credentials issued by the institution, how might registrar professionals lead conversations about how to handle such credentials?
So, so this is kind of interesting. It's something that my institution is facing right now. And so we have built partnerships with different organizations, Target, Geico, different companies who are trying to upskill their staff and their students there. And so we are receiving, different credentials from these places. And so one of the things that I'm sort of doing is figuring out, how do we ingest that type of credit when it's coming from an organization that doesn't really issue a transcript. So it's kind of, figuring out, okay, how do you transfer this in? Or, can it be transferable? Or, what does this look like on our transcript? And so sort of that entire conversation of like, you're now going to start seeing these different types of micro-credentials come in, whether they're credit bearing or non-credit bearing. And how do you sort of manage that at your institution? I don't have the answer. So if anybody else does, I'd love to talk to you.
I think, I gave some examples already of some of the non-credit micro-credentials we're offering. And I do think this fits into some of the other areas of learner mobility that we as professionals and that AACRAO is really focusing on, including, credit for prior learning. Are there appropriate ways to maybe take some of these non-credit based micro-credentials and tie them into some, whether it's incremental, scaffolding of, credits that could lead to some bigger credentials. I think those are all areas that, we're exploring. And so, I do think that we want to make sure that we can give people meaningful credentials that they can use not only for employment, but also hopefully use them to, keep moving up in their lifelong learning. And so whether that leads to additional non-credit based micro-credentials or, like I said, credit for prior learning. And this is something that's really being, focused on, I think, in industry. Sometimes industry cares more about the skills and less about whether it's on a transcript or not. But we need to be in tune and working in partnership with them so that we are meeting the needs of workforce, society, our learners, and all.
Yeah, and Jarrell, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about this one specifically, but one thing just I'll piggyback on what Christy shared there is at CU Boulder, I know that as a person who gets to work on a lot of this stuff, that our non-credit, especially on the non-academic units, they are just feel so seen that they have these things that are worthwhile, that are meaningful, and are worthy of the CU Boulder brand, that are being given official recognition. And they're not appearing on the transcript, but because the Office of the Registrar is leading in this space, it is being handled in a way that confers official recognition from the university on things everywhere from student affairs to athletics. And I think that that's a kind of a really special place of leadership for registrar professionals. And Jarrell, sorry if I cut you off right as you were about to unmute there.
Oh no, you good. I don't got nothing to contribute that hasn't already been said. So
Perfect. Well, I can't thank Jarrell, Incy, and Christy enough for being panelists today, as well as for the nearly 36 people who took the most valuable resource they have, their time, to join us today as attendees. For those of you who watch this asynchronously, thank you very much for your time. Again, we do have the AACRAO exchange for digital credentials for the community of practice. So we can definitely keep this conversation going, as well as initiate new conversations. Melissa, definitely had caught you earlier in the chat and saw that you re-up the your interest in the corporate learning units. We can definitely create space for that conversation in the community of practice, and hope that you will. I know I'll be there to join you on it. And again, thank you, panelists, so much for joining us and sharing your expertise with us. And have a great afternoon, everybody.
I hope to see many of you at conventions.